Sometimes it comes in the quiet moment when your own child looks you in the eye and speaks to you like you're in the way. If you've ever lived through something like that, tell me your story in the comments. I remember stepping out of the arrival hall with my carry-on rolling behind me, expecting a simple ride home. Ryan stood a few feet away, scrolling on his phone, while Marissa watched me with that fixed half-smile she used whenever she had already decided something for me. She didn't bother with greetings. "Give me the house keys," she said. "He'll put them away so you don't mix things up again." The words hit harder than the cold draft from the doors. I asked, "When did you two change the pickup time?" Ryan didn't lift his head. His thumb kept sliding across the screen like he was answering someone more important. Marissa stepped forward. "You should rest. Let us manage the house. Keeping the keys like some sacred item is a little odd." Her tone carried no hesitation, as if this arrangement had been agreed upon long before I landed. A few people moved past us with luggage carts, but the three of us might as well have been the only ones standing there. My fingers tightened around the metal ring in my pocket. "That's not happening," I said. She tilted her head, glanced at Ryan, then pulled him a short distance away. Their whispers weren't audible, but their expressions told enough annoyance on her face, reluctance on his, a shared calculation between them. They returned almost immediately. "You should take a cab," Ryan said without meeting my eyes. "We're busy," Marissa added, her hand curled around his arm as they turned toward the exit. Ryan followed her lead without protest. I watched them walk out through the sliding doors as if leaving an errand unfinished. No backward glance. No check to see whether I'd understood. Just gone. The handle of my carry-on felt heavier than it should. A few travelers brushed by, weaving through the flow without noticing anything unusual. Maybe nothing about this scene looked strange from the outside. An older man standing still, two younger adults heading out, everyone minding their own business. Yet something had shifted, and it settled deep enough for me to feel it, like a bruise forming under the skin. Raising my phone didn't change much. There were no missed calls, no messages, no explanation. Only the lingering sense that a line had been crossed so casually, it left a mark. I picked up the bag again and moved toward the taxi area. Each step felt deliberate, not rushed, not shaken, just measured the way a man walks, when he realizes his footing in his own family isn't what he believed. The taxi dropped me off near the driveway, and the first thing that drew my attention was the mailbox. Letters jammed against each other, some pushed so deep I had to tug hard to get them out. A few envelopes had torn edges like someone had opened them in a hurry and didn't bother to seal them back. HOA notices, fee reminders, a flyer about a community meeting I hadn't heard of, all stacked in a way that suggested more than simple neglect. While sorting through the stack, the neighbor across the street, Mr. Dalton, called out from his porch. "Thought you moved in with the kids," he said. "Didn't expect to see you back." The comment stopped me more than the shredded envelopes. "Why would you think that?" He shrugged. "Your daughter-in-law mentioned it. Sounded like a done deal." He waved once and went back to whatever he'd been doing, leaving me standing with an armful of letters and an unease settling between my ribs. The phone buzzed with a message from Paul, a former co-worker. "Congrats on selling the house to your son. Big step, man." I stared at the screen long enough for the text to fade. No point correcting anything yet. Something had shifted beneath my feet, and I needed to understand the shape of it before responding to anyone. The house key turned, but the door felt heavier than usual when I pushed it open. A small detail, but even tiny changes carried weight when stacked together. Keys on the hook weren't hanging at the usual angle. A stack of bank documents sat on the counter where I didn't recall leaving them. My calendar pinged with an automatic reminder about an appointment with the bank manager the following week. Moments later, a second notification appeared, saying the meeting had been canceled. No explanation, no reschedule option. Just removed. A voicemail blinked on the home phone. "Mr. Hartman, this is Brent from Harbor Realty. Just confirming the transition arrangements for the rental usage going forward. Call back when you can." No rental usage had ever been discussed with me. It became harder to ignore the tension rising through my shoulders. Each fragment pointed in the same direction, but I needed to see more before drawing conclusions. Years of problem-solving had taught me to move slowly when something felt off. Not long after, the weight of it all pushed me out of the house. The zipper on my work jacket kept snagging, so I carried it to the small tailor shop in Old Port. Linda stood behind the counter marking hems on a pair of slacks for another customer. She glanced up long enough to catch my expression. When the customer left, she pointed at the jacket. "What happened to you?" "It's just the zipper," I said, placing the jacket on the table. "That's not what I asked." Her eyes stayed on my face, not the coat. "What did they do?" Most people use the word. They loosely. Linda used it with accuracy, and hearing it out loud sent a faint jolt through me. It's nothing I muttered, though it sounded thin even to me. She threaded a needle, leaned closer, and kept her tone calm. "No one changes their behavior toward you unless they believe you won't push back." The sentence lingered. She didn't elaborate. She didn't soften it. She simply returned to stitching the zipper, leaving me to process her point on my own. Something in me shifted, not dramatically, but enough to unsettle the ground again. Grateful for the repair I paid, thanked her, and stepped out. Back in Nightville, the sun had already dipped lower. My front steps felt unfamiliar as I climbed them. The air carried that faint smell of pine from the yard, something I'd always found steadying, but even that didn't settle the unease. At the door, my hand paused. The lock plate had shallow scratches around the keyhole. Not deep enough to be obvious, but not something I'd leave behind either. Leaning closer brought the marks into clearer view. Someone had tried a key hastily or tried one that didn't quite fit. My phone vibrated before the thought fully formed. A message from Ryan appeared on the screen. "Dad, don't touch any paperwork. I've got it covered." The timing made my stomach knot. The words hung there uninvited and cold. I stayed in the doorway, one hand still near the lock, reading the message again, while everything around me seemed to move further out of my control. The message from Ryan stayed on the screen long after I'd stepped past the doorway. A mix of doubt and something close to embarrassment pressed in on me. Part of me wondered if I had missed a renewal notice somewhere or misread a deadline. Another part refused to believe I had let things slip that far. A knock on the railing startled me. Mrs. Granger, the elderly woman from 2 houses down, stood there with her cardigan pulled tight around her shoulders. "Heard you were moving in with the kids," she said. "Marissa mentioned you weren't doing well. Said they needed to take over before things got messy." That statement landed harder than expected. "Is that what she told you?" "She sounded worried," Mrs. Granger replied, though the hesitation in her voice betrayed her confusion. I didn't know what to think. Her footsteps faded as she went back toward her porch, leaving me standing with the uneasy possibility that maybe others had heard similar comments. That kind of rumor had a way of spreading before anyone could correct it. The phone rang before the thought fully settled. "This is Harbor Realty." Following up, a woman announced as soon as I answered, "We're scheduling the property inspection for the new rental listing. Looking to confirm access for our team." "There is no rental listing," I said. A pause stretched on the line. "Oh, Ryan told us he's the contact for the home since you're stepping back." The call ended awkwardly, and the tension that had been growing since yesterday tightened another notch. Something deliberate was happening, and every attempt to ignore it only made the picture clearer. I turned to check my HOA account on the computer, but the login page blocked me. Incorrect password. Reset attempts went nowhere. After a few tries, a message appeared saying the account had been restricted by an administrator. The administrator was listed as Ryan. Hands braced on the desk, I took a slow breath. Each move they made cut off one more piece of my access. If I didn't start keeping track, things could disappear before I knew it. The file cabinet creaked when I pulled it open. Papers rustled as I looked for the property deed, insurance documents, any contract that tied the house legally to me alone. A small stack emerged every page, familiar, every signature unmistakably mine. The sight steadied me just enough to act. A portable scanner sat on the shelf above. I powered it on, fed each document through, and stored the digital copies on a separate drive. Sending them to Mark, a friend in real estate law, felt like the next logical step. The email went out with a short note. Need you to look at these. Something's off. No details. Nothing emotional. Just facts. The phone buzzed again, this time with Ryan's name lighting up the screen. The timing made me tap the record button before hitting accept. What are you doing? His tone held frustration, but it was the polished version he used when he wanted sympathy. You're making things harder than they need to be. I'm checking my paperwork, I said. You're stressing me out. Do you know how much I'm handling for everyone Marissa's been trying to help, but you keep resisting? The phrase for everyone carried a heavy implication. He paused, then softened his tone. Just let us take care of it. Don't complicate things. The call ended with that vague edge of accusation lingering in the air. The recording saved automatically. Watching the file name pop onto the screen felt like placing one stone onto a stack I hoped I'd never need. Hours passed with me sorting documents, labeling digital folders, and checking bank emails. Most messages looked normal until one caught my attention. The bank had sent a notice about an update request for the primary contact. It claimed someone had submitted a form linking Ryan's number and address to my account. That request hadn't come from me. Moving back through the house, I kept replaying small hints I'd ignored, questions Marissa asked about property taxes the day Ryan asked where the home insurance file was, comments about streamlining things. The desk drawer near the hallway held older paperwork, some from before my wife passed. While shuffling through envelopes, one felt thinner than the rest. It had been sliced open along the side, not at the flap. A bank logo printed across the front made me tug it free. Inside lay a statement addressed to me dated last month. Someone had peeled it open, then stuffed it back hastily, as if hoping I wouldn't notice. The corner of the paper curled where a thumb had pressed too hard. I walked in as soon as the doors unlocked and headed straight to the service desk, the tampered envelope folded in my hand. A young employee named Carol waved me over. I need to ask about a notice that was mailed to me, I said, placing the letter on the counter. It mentions a contact update. She typed my name into the system. Her expression shifted. According to our records, your son authorized a change to your file last week. That authorization didn't come from me. My tone stayed level, but something in her posture straightened. You didn't sign Form 14B. Never saw it. She turned her screen, slightly careful not to reveal everything, but enough for me to catch Ryan's name, listed as the secondary contact with full communication rights. A dull throb started behind my eyes as she explained the process for disputing unauthorized changes. By the time she finished printing the instructions, my phone buzzed repeatedly. A cascade of messages filled the family group chat. Marissa's words sat at the top. Michael refuses to cooperate. He's making risky decisions and we're trying to protect the family. Below that, a longer message: he's been unstable lately. Ryan is doing everything he can. Please support us. The phrasing felt calculated, an appeal designed to turn sympathy her way and suspicion toward me. Reactions loaded beneath her post-hearts sad faces, comments about hoping I get help. 2 calls came in before I left the parking lot. The first from my cousin Peter. "Why are you making life hard for them?" he demanded. "They're stepping up for you." The second from an aunt in New Hampshire. "Selling the house is generous, but dragging it out like this is selfish." None of these people had heard a single word from me. They were already reacting to the story they'd been fed. Driving back to Nightville felt heavier than the morning trip downtown. When I pulled into the driveway, Ryan's car sat near the curb. He got out before I even turned off the engine. "Dad, we need to talk." His pace toward me was quick, determined. "This is getting out of hand. We're going to fix the bank paperwork," I said, stepping out. "That's what I'm trying to do." His voice rose just enough to show impatience. "But you won't sign the transfer documents. You're holding everything up. I'm reviewing them. You've had plenty of time." He glanced toward the house like he wanted to walk in without me. "Listen, I'm trying to manage all this. It'd go smoother if you'd just trust me." Marissa's spin had done its work. He believed he was the one cleaning up after me. "What exactly do you think I'm handing over?" I asked. "The responsibility," he shot back. "You keep every little detail under your thumb. Let me take it. Let me protect our future." There it was, the line between help and control crossed without hesitation. "You need to sign the transfer," he pressed. "Today. I can't keep covering for you. I never asked you to cover for me." His jaw tightened. "Don't do this. Don't make me the bad guy. Marissa and I are doing everything we can." A part of me wanted to shake him, force him to look past whatever story he'd been fed. Another part knew that pushing now would only reinforce whatever narrative Marissa had built. "Let me see the documents again," I said. He exhaled sharply, frustrated. "We're trying to help you. You're making it impossible." He walked back to his car, muttering something I didn't catch. The engine revved, and he pulled away without waiting for me to respond. The silence he left behind wasn't peaceful. It carried the echo of something breaking trust, perhaps, or the assumption that family would choose fairness over convenience. I stepped into the house with a clearer understanding than before. Their campaign wasn't sloppy. Each move was coordinated shift, the family's perception sway, the bank limit. My access create the impression that I needed supervision. A long breath steadied me. The urge to react emotionally faded, replaced by something steadier. Not anger, not panic. Focus. The drawer in my desk held a stack of folders already sorted from the night before. They slid easily into a large canvas bag, the deed insurance scanned copies, bank statements, the HOA letters, and that sliced open envelope. Mark picked up on the second ring when I called. "Something's happening," I said. "I need an appointment." "Come in tomorrow morning," he replied. "Bring everything you have." "I will." The line clicked off. Locking it felt different this time, not a routine action, but a step toward something I knew I couldn't avoid anymore. Mark's office sat on the 3rd floor of a brick building downtown. I walked straight in, dropped the heavy canvas bag on his desk, and took a seat before he even finished greeting me. He opened the zipper and sifted through the folders. Pages spread across the table as he studied signatures, dates, and bank correspondence. His brow pulled tight. "These aren't yours," he said, tapping one authorization form with his pen. "Someone tried to imitate your signature, but it's sloppy. If this went through, they were counting on you not noticing." My stomach tightened, though I worked to keep my posture steady. "So it's forged." He nodded. "And not very well." Before he continued, a knock sounded at the doorway. Linda stepped in, holding 2 paper cups. "You forgot your coffee last time," she said. "Thought you'd need it today." She handed me one, then slipped into a chair near the wall. She didn't try to insert herself into the conversation, but her attention stayed fixed on Mark. He sat back, laced his fingers, and explained the consequences. "If you stay silent, they'll use these documents to push you out of every legal channel connected to the house. HOA bank utilities, everything could shift under their name. Once that narrative takes root, reversing it becomes complicated. His voice was calm, not dramatic, which somehow made the danger sharper. While he spoke, my phone buzzed. An email notification rolled across the top of the screen. No name, just an address I didn't recognize. I opened it. A single line appeared. "You should hear what they said when they thought you weren't around." Below it, an audio file. I looked at Mark. He gestured for me to play it. Marissa's voice came through, first clipped and confident. "We're moving his place under our names. Once that's done, the rest won't matter. He'll have no reason to argue." Another voice, someone from a realty office, asked, "Is he aware of these changes?" "He doesn't need to be," she answered. "As long as Ryan signs where I tell him it'll go through. Getting his house is step one." Linda drew in a sharp breath. Her hands closed around her coffee cup. I've heard that tone before, she murmured. "My ex talked the same way the year he took everything I had." She looked at me not with pity but recognition. "People don't talk like that unless they think you'll fold. They're counting on your silence." The weight of her words pressed through me, mixing with Mark's analysis. Two different people, two different histories, both pointing to the same conclusion. My phone chimed again, this time from the family group chat. One message after another slid up the screen. "Ryan, Dad's been slipping for months. I'm trying to handle things, but he's fighting me." Marissa: "He can't keep track of bills. We're doing what's best for him." Another cousin reacted with, "We're praying for him." Someone else wrote, "Be patient with your father." The shift was almost complete. They were turning me into the unstable one, the man who needed supervision. Mark leaned forward. "They're trying to establish a pattern. If they control the story long enough, people will believe it. Judges will consider it. Paperwork will reflect it. And you'll be the one defending yourself instead of your property." A long moment passed before he added, "You need to decide whether you want peace or your rights." The question wasn't an accusation. It was a junction. A part of me wanted to pretend none of this was happening, to step back and hope things would settle. Another part understood that stepping back was what allowed this to grow in the first place. Linda stood and touched my arm lightly. "You don't have to start a war," she said. "But you do have to stop giving them the impression you're out of the way." Her voice carried the kind of truth you feel before you accept it. Mark gathered the pages back into the folder. "Take these with you. Don't send originals anywhere. I'll draft a statement for the bank and HOA. But the sooner you organize your files, the better. They may try to erase things." Hearing that pushed me into motion. Thanking both of them, I walked out with the folders under my arm. The elevator ride felt long, even though it was only 3 floors. Ryan's messages kept rolling, and every one of them designed to paint me as a burden. "Dad, you're scaring people. Why didn't you check with me first? We're doing all of this for your sake." Each message pushed a little more weight onto my chest, though something steadier grew underneath it. By the time I stepped out onto the street, my thoughts had narrowed into something sharper. No panic, no rush, just a slow, deliberate clarity. Control had been slipping 1 inch at a time. If I didn't anchor myself now, they would keep going until there was nothing left to anchor. The drive back toward Old Port gave me room to think. Linda's shop came into view, and I pulled into an open spot near the sidewalk. The wind carried a faint scent of the harbor mixed with traffic, but I barely registered it. What mattered sat in the passenger seat, the folders, the phone, and the pieces of a story I hadn't assembled yet. Opening the laptop, I positioned it over my knees. The screen lit up, waiting. Files needed to be collected, emails downloaded, logs stored before someone else found a way to tamper with them. The house felt unfamiliar as I worked through the piles spread across the dining table. Mark's instructions stayed in my mind while I sorted documents into separate stacks: property records, bank letters, insurance forms, printed emails. Every piece needed to be reviewed, scanned, labeled, and stored somewhere they couldn't reach. Copies of the deed lay beside photos I'd taken of the scratched lock. The marks weren't deep, but they were distinct enough to show someone had rushed. I slid the images into a folder marked Access Attempts. Next to it, I placed the HOA letters, including the one Mr. Dalton said Marissa had been carrying a few weeks earlier. Seeing them together painted a clearer pattern than any single page could. Linda texted, "Once mid-morning I'll ask around." Nothing dramatic, just checking what people saw. True to her word, she kept it subtle. A short while later, she forwarded a voice note from our neighbor, Alice, confirming she'd seen Marissa removing mail from my box to help him stay organized. The phrasing sounded innocent enough, but the implication wasn't. Ryan's message arrived shortly after. "Stop digging. Don't make us go further." The tone was controlled, almost polite, but the threat beneath it sat plain as daylight. The message sharpened my focus rather than dull it. I saved a screenshot noting the time and date, then moved it into the digital archive. Another email pinged the HOA portal notifying me that my login had been permanently disabled. A second alert from the bank landed seconds later, stating that someone had tried to replace the primary account holder contact again. My name still sat on the file, but the system flagged the attempt as pending verification. Each warning made the air feel heavier. I logged both notifications, saved them to the same drive, and kept going. Around noon, a knock echoed at the door. Tom stood on the step, clutching his jacket like he wasn't sure he should come in. "Ryan called me," he said once I opened the door. "Said the family's worried about you." I stepped aside so he could enter. "He didn't mention anything on his end. He said you were overwhelmed, that he's taking care of things." Tom's brow creased. But when I asked about paperwork, he changed the subject. We sat at the table, and he studied the stacks of documents. What's really going on? Rather than launch into a speech, I slid a few pages toward him. The forged signature, the HOA lockout notice, the bank alert. Tom's expression darkened as he read. "Why would he do this? That's what I'm trying to understand." He leaned back, exhaling slowly. "I thought it was just tension between you two. This is something else." His voice trembled slightly and guilt flickered across his features. I told him I'd try to mediate, but he wouldn't answer when I pressed. He hung up on me. "Did he say anything before ending the call?" I asked. He said, "Uncle, don't drag yourself into it." That's all. I reached into my pocket, pressed the record button on my phone, and placed it on the table without making a show of it. The conversation continued. Details, observations, timelines. Nothing exaggerated. Just facts from a man who'd walked in to understand and ended up seeing more than he expected. When he finally stood to leave, he placed a hand on my shoulder. "You don't deserve this. Tell me if you need me to speak to anyone. I'll keep that in mind." After he left, I saved the recording and filed it with the others. A list began forming in my notebook. Every incident, every suspicious action, each attempt to alter my access. Writing it down helped separate the facts from the noise. HOA notices removed. Bank contact change request. Unauthorized signature. Mail opened. Lock scratched. Group chat statements against me. Real estate inquiry. Ryan's warning messages. Marissa's recorded conversation. Item by item, the pattern grew undeniable. When the phone rang again, I almost ignored it. Mark's name appeared on the screen, so I answered. His tone was sharper than usual. "I've been digging through the property archive," he said. "Something's off in the transfer record from 10 years ago." "What kind of off?" "There's an attachment in your file that doesn't match the standard format. It references a clause only used when a property has multiple co-owners." He paused. "Yours shouldn't have that clause." Not unless someone inserted something later. A slow tension settled across my chest. So what does that mean? It means you should prepare yourself. Whatever they filed, it wasn't an accident someone tried to rewrite part of the ownership history. Only the original owner could spot the inconsistency. The line held for a moment, both of us absorbing the weight of that discovery. "I'll explain everything when you come in," he added. "Just be ready." After the call ended, I closed the notebook, gathered the scattered papers into a single stack, and set them beside the laptop. A faint hum filled the room from the machine still running, waiting for me to continue the work. The cursor blinked on the screen, steady and patient, while I prepared the next set of files to upload. The notary's office smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant. A stack of forms lay on the desk in front of me, and the woman on the other side kept glancing between her screen and the documents, as if waiting for something to break loose. "Mr. Hartman," she said, tapping a highlighted line, "there's an urgent request to transfer ownership to Ryan Hartman and Marissa Hartman. It was submitted with your name attached, but the system flagged it because the signatures don't match previous samples." Her words landed cold and steady. "You can either sign here to confirm the transfer," she continued, sliding a pen toward me, "or we'll need to start a formal dispute. That process is long weeks, maybe months." The door opened before I answered. Ryan and Marissa walked in, talking low between themselves, until they noticed me already seated. Marissa straightened. "Good, you're here. Just sign. We've already handled the hard parts." Ryan moved to my side of the desk like he intended to supervise. "Don't drag this out. We're trying to make sure things stay organized." The notary looked uncomfortable, but she didn't intervene. Before I could respond, the phone in my pocket vibrated. I ignored it. Another buzz followed, then another. A call flashed from Aunt Linda in New Hampshire, then Peter, then a cousin I hadn't spoken to in months. The notary raised an eyebrow. "Popular morning," Marissa crossed her arms. "They're worried. He's been very resistant lately. Words that would have sounded caring in any other context felt like a noose tightening." Another call came in, and this time the voicemail preview appeared. "Michael, stop giving them trouble. They're trying to help you." The flood of pressure from family people who had no idea what was happening pushed the room into a strange stillness. Their voices weren't raised, but their certainty boxed me into a corner. Losing the house wasn't an abstract fear. It hit me then, with full force. I had rebuilt it after my wife died. Every beam and nail held some memory I wasn't ready to surrender. "Dad," Marissa said, leaning closer, "just sign so we can move forward. This is exhausting for everyone." The pen rested inches from my fingers. The phone buzzed one more time. A new text from Mark Duff. "I found your original spousal contract filed before the refinance. It protects your full ownership. Bring it out now." A jolt went through me. I reached into the folder I'd carried with me, pulled out the thick document with my late wife's signature across the final page, and laid it on the table. "This is the governing agreement," I said. The notary froze. Her eyes scanned the contract twice, then a third time. "Where did this come from? It's original. Never amended. Never voided." She took a deep breath, folded her hands, and said, "Then the transfer request cannot proceed. This overrides every other document presented today." Ryan's posture crumpled for a second, like a string had been cut. Marissa's expression shifted from confidence to something closer to fury. "That contract shouldn't exist," she snapped. "You told me it was gone," she hissed at Ryan under her breath, but not quiet enough to hide the accusation. Ryan couldn't look at me. "You're making a mistake." The notary shook her head. "No. The file must be reviewed in full. Until further notice, all requests submitted under your names are frozen." She stood, collected her papers, and said, "I'll notify the county registrar. Please do not submit anything else until this investigation is complete." Marissa scoffed. "This is ridiculous." The notary left the room, leaving the four of us staring at each other. The silence felt stretched thin. Ryan rubbed the bridge of his nose. "You blindsided us." "You blindsided yourselves," I answered. "You didn't bother asking what existed before you started rewriting things." Marissa stepped toward me. "You think this solves anything? You're being dramatic." Ryan tried to hush her, but she shook him off. The old version of me, the version that would have backed down to avoid conflict, didn't surface. The anger didn't either. What settled was something steadier, almost clinical. A line had been drawn long before this meeting. I was just acknowledging it now. Ryan tried again. "We can still fix this. Just talk to us." Later, I said, gathering my folders. "Not here." He didn't like the answer, but he didn't have another argument ready. Marissa kept muttering complaints under her breath, most of them sharp, none of them worth engaging. I stepped out of the conference room first. The hallway felt narrower than when I'd walked in. My grip tightened on the handle of the folder, the one piece of proof strong enough to halt everything they'd orchestrated. Outside, the late morning air hit my face, steady and cool. Cars rolled past on Congress Street. A bus hissed as it pulled in across the road. Life moved as if nothing had happened. Mark didn't waste time after I stepped into his office. He motioned for me to sit and pushed a folder across the desk. "It's done," he said. "Your ownership is fully restored. Every false document they filed is under investigation. The county registrar flagged multiple discrepancies, and the bank has opened a formal inquiry." A steady breath left my lungs when I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The relief didn't arrive as a rush, it settled in slower, measured the way cold metal warms in a person's hand. Mark continued. "HOA submitted a statement confirming someone accessed your mailbox without authorization. They're required to follow up." I nodded, letting the information land piece by piece. "You should know," he added, "Ryan may face consequences for the attempted signature use. It's being reviewed." Before responding, the office door opened. Linda stepped in with a paper cup, the same brand she'd brought me a dozen times before. "He told you she asked." Mark nodded and left the room to print additional documents. She took the seat beside me. "Then good," she said. "You protected your home. That's not selfish." My gaze dropped to the cup she placed in front of me. "I grew up wanting to be the man who held everything together," I said. "I thought stepping back was the kind thing. Kindness doesn't mean letting people walk over you." Her tone stayed steady. "People love to twist boundaries into cruelty when those boundaries stop benefiting them." A short silence settled, warm, not heavy. Mark returned with 2 sets of papers. "Next steps are simple," he said. "File for sole ownership protection. It will revoke every access Ryan had. After that, he'll need court permission even to view the documents." I signed without hesitation. Not long after, the fallout reached me from every direction. HOA asked me to confirm statements about mailbox tampering. The bank called to verify I had never approved the contact changes. A representative apologized for not catching the forged form sooner. Later that week, word spread through the wider family. Marissa's parents stopped responding to her messages after hearing recordings she hadn't expected anyone to find. A cousin forwarded me a screenshot of a conversation where she'd accused me of having memory decline. Once the truth emerged, those same relatives distanced themselves quickly. And Ryan... News reached me that he'd lost a job offer. The background check flagged his attempt to use my financial data. They called it a breach of trust. No further explanation needed. One evening, he showed up at my door. He didn't knock right away, just hovered, shifting his weight like he wasn't sure if he wanted to confront me or himself. When he finally did knock, the sound was soft, almost careful. "Dad," he said as soon as I opened the door. "Why'd you do all this? What do you get out of it?" The question hit harder than any accusation he'd thrown before. "What I get," I answered, "is the part of my life that belongs to me." He shook his head, as if I were missing the point. "You made this worse than it needed to be. Not an apology. Not even close." "I didn't take anything from you," I said. "I kept what was already mine." His eyes flickered. Maybe anger, maybe shame, I couldn't tell anymore. Whatever he wanted from me that day, he didn't find it. He muttered something and walked back to his car without looking up again. Later that night, I drove to Mark's office to file the last set of documents, sole ownership removal of all third-party permissions, and a legal lock on the property. I watched the clerk stamp each page and slide them into the county system. A simple movement, but the sound of the stamp felt final. A week passed before I packed a small suitcase and drove toward Scarborough. The rental I found wasn't large, one-bedroom, modest kitchen. Nothing extravagant, but the simplicity steadied me. I returned to my job part-time, taking calls from old contacts who still trusted my work with electrical systems. A few days a week, I volunteered with a local support group for older men rebuilding their lives after loss or family conflict. None of us had perfect stories. All of us understood what survival looked like in middle age. On weekends, I walked the trails near Higgins Beach. Nothing ambitious, just enough to remind my legs they still worked, and my lungs could still pull in air without effort. One evening, after a long shift helping an acquaintance replace a faulty breaker, I stepped into my new place and hung my jacket on the hook beside the door. The fabric brushed against the wall, lightly settling into place with no ceremony. No one's voice echoed in the background. No messages demanded an explanation. Nothing pulled at me. The jacket stayed there, steady exactly where I chose to put it. And that was enough.